I'm Chris with Country Roots, by the way. I should say that. Um, and yeah, I've been working on a lot of projects over the years. Been working on building a soil business. I used to have a garden store. About 6 years ago, I decided that I wanted to try to open up an organic gardening store. And so I noticed that there was a lot of hydroponic shops and not a lot of places really cater into, decent organic amendment supplies. And so, I really wanted to try to help that niche and something that I was very passionate about. And it was a good model. It did work pretty well. We got pretty good attraction and, people came from around. But quite frankly, the market is, fairly tough. And a lot of the garden industry did get, kind of tight. And a lot of places had to close doors and things like that. But that doesn't mean we need to close a brand down by any means. And so we've just transitioned and now we're doing our farming operation and our soil business operation from here. And, just trying to minimize things. I mostly run through deliveries and meetups and things like that, which a lot of you have. So it just works better business wise for me there. But so I get a lot of questions about, the things that we work with and the practices that we have and, how to use different things. And, there's a lot of people who want to start a variety of gardening projects and things like that. And so want to kind of put some information together, invite some other farmers out here, invite some other educators out here, invite some people that, work with these different types of practices and have some discussions about them. And, hopefully we can all learn a few things together. I should have a seat though, because I have a spinal fusion. So one of the things about me is years ago I was in an accident and broke my back and both my legs. And, it was a big life changer for me, I'll say that. Before the accident, I was working as a professional geologist throughout the state of Michigan and doing a variety of environmental. Yeah, so I'm a little lower now, but I'll be a lot more comfortable sitting. Yeah, so I was doing a lot of environmental work throughout the state of Michigan. And when you do this type of work, you learn about why you're there, of course. There's a reason that you're there to do these types of testings and things and to, do environmental investigations in the first place. And so, I noticed a lot of things. For one, a lot of places, are impacted or contaminated in various ways. And there wasn't a whole lot of things being done to kind of fully counteract it. For the most part, it's a lot of environmental work is identification of a hazard and mitigation of it. And so there was nobody that I noticed that was really promoting like soil health and how to revitalize these lands and things like that. And so quite frankly, when it comes to environmental work, a lot of the things that are done, the impact that was done is things that was happened in the early 1900s at the earlier industrial revolution. And we're all still dealing with impacts that were done, 100 years ago, 80 years ago, 60 years ago, before, a lot of regulations were put in place. And so at the boom of the Industrial Revolution, there was a big boom in chemical gardening, and it was the big boom of Monsanto gardening and all these salt fertilizers. And, at first it was very invasive pesticides, arsenicals and, heavily toxic lead-based and arsenic-based things that they were using. And various things, I don't want to get too crazy in the depth of all the crap that was sprayed, but I think people understand. And, that was just a boom that just did a lot of negative impact to a lot of farmlands. And so I've always kind of been, pretty passionate about trying to figure out a way to, work the other way, of course, and work with farmers that, and gardeners that are growing, in friendly manners with nature. And so I've transitioned this business over that way, and that's what we've been working on. I want to thank a lot of people here, right? With that being said, there's a lot of people, Pants here particularly, has been helping me for a very long time, helped me build a lot of things around here. And things like this happen with the help of a lot of friends too, and people liking to come out here and, have fun and, get away from, their homes and things. So
to be able to come out and kind of share my perspective on things. Supplement. So we need to take this shell. So I've just taken these from home. I rinse them out really well, and then these once I got a bunch together, I kept them in the fridge. Um, there's two ways to do it. I just put this whole thing in the oven on maybe like 200 degrees and just let them cook. Or you can crush them up and kind of do it over in a cast iron in a pan, and you're just stirring them to toast them a little bit. And what we really want to do is cook that inside membrane, so it flakes off, because we don't want that. So doing it either way will leave that nice and crispy. So we would take, it's two ingredients. It's eggshells and it's white vinegar. Or brown rice. Traditionally, it's brown rice vinegar. If I had any apple cider vinegar that I make left, I would use that. Otherwise, just an organic or one of the natural white distilled vinegars. We're really just looking for that reaction using the acetic acid. The cheaper white vinegars I stay away from. They're kind of made from not so good source material. So it's fairly cheap. I think these are like $3 each. So I'm going to take some eggshells, and like I said, these have already been toasted. I'm just going to crush them up in this bowl.
Does the membrane burn off? How do you remove the membrane once it's been toasted?
We're going to do that right now.
That's how. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wash my eggs religiously now because I make this all the time as well. And so it's easier for me. I get my finger in there and just get the goobers right out of it, so that it's easier for me to make this process. But he'll show you too.
Yep. Yeah, I always rinse all my eggshells after I use them, really just for this purpose. So anything that is left on there will crisp up, and then I got a little bit more in here.
Boom.
So you really just want as small as you can. You don't want to powder them, but you just want to have as much surface area as possible. It'll make the reaction go faster. This one will take roughly about the same time as FEJ, 7 to 10 days, something like that.
Yeah, most of these ferment programs, kombuchas, not kombuchas, I shouldn't say, but
It's a good one to use, though. Honestly, I use kombucha as a base for some ferments too, instead of labs.
but these extraction processes, a lot of times 7 to 10 days is good. Some of the heavier ones that don't release their stuff, they really got to soak longer to soften up. So just continuous releasing stuff. Like I do chaga tincture, and that's really hard mushroom Francis has back there. You can show people, but I chop that one up into bits and make a traditional tincture out of that one. And that was one my grandfather taught me because he had some heart problems, and so he took that one regularly for his heart.
Like a drop, or
Yeah, similar to the way I talked about it in the water. You just just put a little a few milliliter squirt.
cool.
We'll drop her full.
So we've got some crushed up eggshell, real small. We're gonna take it in a mason jar. Your ratio is it's basically one part eggshell to 10 parts vinegar. So you don't need a ton. A little bit of eggshell, eggshell from a dozen eggs will give you enough water soluble calcium to supplement your garden for quite a while. I use it a little bit more than is recommended in like K&F preparations. But I just read the plant.
Is that 10 to 1 by weight, volume?
It's gonna be volume for this one. It's gonna be volume for this one. The next one is gonna be weight though. All right, so that's about 10% of the jar. We are gonna leave a little bit of headroom too, because this is gonna just form a chemical reaction once we add the vinegar, and that's why I kind of wanted to do it first, because once I start adding this, oh my god, I didn't do the part about. Sorry, I was supposed to put them in the bowl, toss it up in the air outside, and that membrane will pop off. Luckily, there weren't too many in there. That's what I get. Anywho, so it's just like if you save any seeds, you winnow the seeds after after you dehull them. Similar to that process for this.
Yeah, if you do it too quick sometimes, and I've done it multiple times, you just it's like a nuclear reaction, and it just comes right at you.
Yep. Yep. So sorry I missed that part, but
What does the membrane do to it now?
it could just get off in the actual ferment. It'll float to the top, and then it could just sometimes attract molds, something like that. It's not the end of the world. Once the reaction's complete, I could strain it off, and it's not the end of the world. It's still completely usable. So you'll see it's already starting to bubble away. And I'm not adding it all just yet. I'm gonna let it kind of go crazy for a minute. We're not gonna fill it up all the way. We're probably gonna go to, let's say here, the shoulder, because it is gonna do this violent bubbling for a little while. Your end product after 7 to 10 days, once you see all the bubbles subside, it's not producing anymore, the reaction's done. You can stop it. It could take longer. I mean, it could take a shorter amount of time than 7. It could take longer than 10, just whenever it's done. And then you would just strain it off, and you would have a slightly golden liquid. I think it just takes on the color of whatever color egg shells you're using, as well as the toasting process kind of aids in this kind of yellowing, carameling effect. But that's water-soluble calcium, as it's referred to in KNF and modern natural farming terms. But it's just acetic acid reacting with the calcium in the shells to create calcium acetate, which is that water-soluble form of calcium.
And how do you use that? Do you dilute it?
Yeah, you dilute it. I believe it's in between 4 to 8. Chris, is that it? Calcium in KNF milliliters. Per
Yeah,
gallon?
4 to 8. Yep.
Yeah, 4 to 8. It all depends on whether it's you're in a vegetative tree flower.
And that's good through life, especially with cannabis. One of the things that we're really starting to understand more and more is the strength of the trickle dose calcium. The plants can get like so much calcium out of the soil, and as a soil builder, I know you can only put so much calcium into the soil. I could put as much as I want, obviously, but if I put too much, it's going to have a problem. And so having like water-soluble calcium feeds that you can kind of just trickle it through life, it's a different available form of those calciums for the plants, and so it helps keep them strong, robust, and vital, throughout the process.
How long
And
is that
they
good
really
for,
like that.
after it's made?
This is another one that if you put it in a nice, cool area,
area.
it could be good for a year.
Yeah,
It really can.
I call it an indefinite for this one.
Yeah, because it's a vinegar, really. And it could grow a mother on it, because it is a vinegar, especially if you're using vinegar with the mother. But that mother's just a mother, it's just that little blob, that thick snot-looking blob that gets on the top of them. But it's not a problem, and people do actually take that mother and put it in their soil beds because there's beneficial bacteria and algae and things that can get in. And so I've never used mothers in my soil, but my mother-in-law, God bless her soul, she did. She was big into making kombuchas, and she would use her mothers, throughout her garden.
That's awesome. I've got a big old one. I'm wondering what I need to do with it. All right, so that's about the level we're going to go up with the vinegar, and you're just going to let it rip. I don't have any paper towel or a napkin or something like that instead of the hard lid, because it does need to breathe. Lots of gas being produced. Or if you just have a lid, you can just put it on just loosely, so it can ebb and flow. And 7 to 10 days, like I said, once the reaction is done, you'll see no bubbles, and you can strain it off and use it at that 4 to 8 milliliter per gallon. That's a teaspoon. It all depends on what stage of growth your plants are in, or how depleted your soil may be, etc.
Per gallon, 4 to 8 mils.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a holistic approach. You can do more than that. I do up to a tablespoon. And that's
if you want a poster, I have some smaller ones too somewhere, but
30 mils.
Only
So
the cake with it.
yeah, I won't go crazy with it just because it is vinegar. I don't want it to affect
Yeah.
the pH. Um, you have to be semi-mindful of when you're adding some of the cayenne preparations while altering the pH of what you're putting in. Because even though we're trying to do a living soil, some of it you just can't. It just won't work. Um, so second, I wanted to make a nitrogen supplement with you guys. So, beautiful thing about living here in Michigan, we live so close to so many inland lakes. We have lots of ability to catch fish or procure fish in some way or another. If you don't fish yourself, maybe. So this is one way to speed up that breakdown process. Amino acids are the building blocks of life. Um, so being able to, and building blocks to our life as well as plant life. So being able to turn them into an already available amino acid form means it's immediately plant available. You're going to see action within a day and a half of applying it. There's a similar one that I am researching and experimenting it with using whole eggs and a vinegar base to get rid of, if you didn't want to use a fish product. If I would have thought, I would have prepped it, a couple weeks ago when I needed to. But we'll do fish. So I work at a culinary school. I don't fish a ton. I do more gardening and the more land aspect, livestock, etc. But I work at a culinary school, and we get a bunch of fish in, and there's always extra, and they can't reuse it if I pop it in the freezer and thaw it out. It's going to be trash for them. So instead of it going into our dumpster and going to the landfill, I like to take it home. And we get a variety in between whole salmon, other whole white fishes, sea basses. This that we're going to play with is red snapper. I've done lobster, whatever. So the only input is, again, this is going to be a little bit more than 2 ingredients, but the 2 main ingredients are fish and sugar. And my number one sugar is that green one, that Zolka. Unfortunately, when I was at the Meijer this morning, their sugar options were super limited. So I got a pure cane golden sugar. But ideally, I would use the Zolka, the non-GMO one, or an organic cane. But as long as it's cane, and I see that's a non-GMO, I'm okay with using it because I know that's at least not going to have any herbicide in the non-GMO. So, sugar. We have fish. You can keep it whole depending on your size. Sometimes I'll layer it. I'll keep them whole and just layer the fish around it. It'll take a little longer. I decided to chop this stuff up to make it mix in a little bit better, and it'll speed up the process. So there are 2 other ingredients. One is going to be, actually 3. One is going to be some leaf mold soil that we were talking about yesterday. So I went to an undisturbed wooded area where a bunch of oak leaves fall, and I scraped away the top layer of leaves and acorns, and I just grabbed that top centimeter. So there's some good broken down leaf mold here. You can kind of see it. Some of it's my celial in nature, and others will just look like a white blob. So looks like a ground leaf got just moldy. That's good. It's good biology that we want to add into this. It'll increase diversity in it. It'll also help basically the ferment stay with some good bacteria. So if there's any bad bacteria, bad pathogens, can try to outweigh it. So I'm going to use this container is way too big for this process. You want to put it in a similar size. I wanted to do something clear, that's all I had. But you want to put it in something where you're not going to have a lot of airspace, because you are going to cover this and seal it, and you don't want anything to get in, especially all the flies that want to. That's one way that this preparation can go off, is if some flies get in it and it gets all wonky. Can't have maggots. So we've got the leaf mold soil, we've got fish, we've got sugar. These two are optional. OHN, Chris talked about yesterday, Oriental Herbal Nutrient. So this is basically a tincture of a handful of different herbs. I think I did the traditional KNF, like 5 or 6 of them. Chris has done some extra goodies, which is awesome. I think I'm going to start doing that next time. Anywho, you want to add this? It'll add maybe a little bit of, I don't know actually what it actually, adding a little bit of health. There's some antimicrobial properties in some of the substances. But Master Cho only adds literally like a couple drops in the top. You'll see. So again, not necessary. If you have it, use it. I like OHN to ingest personally. I like a dropper full. It's delicious. I'll take a dropper full in some water, or a dropper full and chase it with some water. It's good for your gut. It's good for your health, like Chris was saying.
I'll occasionally eat it with some beef too. You know,
that's a good idea. I could think of being good with some like soy, like Asian style.
Yeah, like a lot of people salt their meat before they cook it. Put a little bit of that OHN on there.
That's a good idea. The other optional thing is IMO2. So this is indigenous microorganisms. This is the second step of, it goes up from all the way from IMO1, which would be a rice collection. And you're using that rice to basically collect indigenous microbes in your area. It'll collect on the rice, and then it gets all white and fuzzy, and hopefully white and fuzzy. You might get some funky stuff. But you'd mix that with sugar and to stabilize it. So this is a bunch of good bacteria that are dormant right now, good microbiology. And again, I'm adding this just for diversity's sake. And it's not needed. There's enough life in some of that leaf mold soil that we don't need this. But again, if you have it, I'm always going to preach diversity. So I'm going to open these up a little bit so my hands get dirty.
Yeah, I'll let him play in the fish. Yeah, he'll be like, what'd you get into today?
My husband would be like, that's it, and put my foot down. Put my coffee, yeah. Not my coffee.
Alright, so pretty straightforward, similar to the FPJ process with the layering of the sugar. I like to put a tiny bit of sugar down in the bottom.
Yeah.
Just a very thin layer. And all I'm going to do is make a fish lasagna. You could sprinkle some of the sugar around all over this and mix it all around. If I had whole fish, I'd be rubbing it in a lot more. But since these are already chunked out, and I'm really just gonna put them in there, put a single layer on the bottom. And you can pack it because it's gonna shrink. You're not gonna get a ton, so.
So are you doing this with the hard-boiled egg? Is that correct? You're going to put that?
Yeah, it's just
have that into a large amount of fish filling.
yeah, exactly. I can talk about that at towards the end. I just don't want to confuse the two processes. But yeah, it's another option that I've been reading about. So I'm gonna completely cover this layer pretty darn well, and I'm just gonna keep layering these in here.
As soon as I
Thank you. The ratio, just like FPJ, is equal parts. This is by weight. I have roughly 7 to 8 pounds of fish. So I grabbed 3.5 pounders of sugar. It doesn't have to be exact. But equal parts by weight. So this is one of the longer preparations. To get this usable, honestly, a full year. You could use it in 6 to 8 months, but it's going to develop and break down and enrich up to that year mark. So this is going to pull out, the sugar is going to use osmotic pressure to basically push and pull liquid out of the fish, and it's going to liquefy. All the little pin bones will still be there. Some of them will break down and soften. The meat will soften and get very liquid. See, and I didn't manage my sugar properly. I should have been adding more as I go. You know. So I'm just gonna dig this a little bit and do it this way. So I'm doing really. This is gonna be optimal, honestly, this way. Tossing it all together so every nook and cranny is covered. And when you have whole ones, you do have to make sure you're getting like the insides of the fish. All right, so I'm gonna leave enough sugar to. I want to cap this thing, and I'm gonna cap it because I want to. It's gonna create a barrier, an oxygen barrier. Keep it nice and safe without any pests or anything getting in. And you might think, how does this smell once you're actually fermenting it? I left this in my laundry room behind the door, and you couldn't even tell. 18 months. I've done it in like 5-gallon buckets. That's what I usually do. I've got a 35, 40-gallon barrel that I'll do in the garage, but it does not stink if it's done properly. And your lid is sealed. Nothing will get in there. So I'm packing this fairly tight. Fairly tight in there. And I'm going to take some of this leaf mold soil, just a small handful. I'm going to put a tiny bit over the fish. Introduce some biology. And then I'm going to take the rest of my sugar and basically make a sugar cap. Talking like 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Everything covered. So we're all evened out, everything is covered. I've got a tiny bit more soil here. That was enough that you could put in, you don't need to put a ton. But I'm gonna mix some of this IMO2 in with the soil. You don't need much, I'm doing maybe like a 1/2 teaspoon. Mix it in the soil and add that on top. It doesn't need to cover it. It's very, do how you want. And then last would be just a couple drops of OHN. Again, totally optional. Dr. Cho Literally takes a dropper and probably does 3 to 5 drops just on the top. So, so similar to the FPJ, I would put a piece of parchment over top, and then, oh, that's funny, I got a worm in here. Oh, that's fun. Put a piece of parchment on top, and then lid it tight. You could put this in your garage, your basement. If you put it in a colder area like a garage during the winter, it's gonna go pretty dormant. It's not gonna have much activity. That's why I like to keep it inside. And as long as it's a well-sealed lid, you have enough sugar on there, you're good. You're not gonna have any smell. So, date it. You can label it with what fishes you put in there. Certain, whether you do white fishes, white fleshed fishes versus like a salmon, have slightly different nutrient profiles. So you can do research on that to see what you like or whatever. I use lobster because they come in dead and I would have to throw them away otherwise. So that has a lot of chitin in it, in the shells that does break down a little bit in the actual process. So that is FAA. It's fish amino acid. Anybody have any questions on this specific preparation before I briefly talk about an alternative?
These organisms are. We know like a few percentages, maybe 5% of how important they are. But microscopic organisms are, quite frankly, I have a geology background and, this is the evolutions of life. It all started with microscopic organisms. And so we don't really know exactly how that even started and what things were. We just start seeing things in the fossil records. And we know that, life came from very simple microscopic things, and it just grew from there. And so, catering to this living soil system around us is vital to our health and vital to, plants and things around us. And the world is learning this now, and this is pretty great. And like I say, it's the advancements of modern sciences and people taking an honest look at what's going on in our soil systems and doing tests with fields where they're catering to an organic environment versus catering to a synthetic salt environment, and what this does over long term. 1 year is one worth of data, but do that for 10 years and what's it looking like there? What's the health of the food? What's the feedback of the people that are is consuming these things? And so that's why I wanted to title this event Foraging too, because we want to work with things as natural as we can. And we recognize that, what we need is in nature, and we can find it, we can cater to it, we can build upon it, we can do all things with it to try to nurse it. And that's what we're going to talk about, throughout the weekend here. And so I make a variety of organic inputs from things that I, work with, as well as Ben does. And then Lena works with a variety of medicines and things that she's talking. So we're going to just kind of talk about both sides a little bit. We're going to do some demonstrations on a tea here in a minute. But yeah, these are the purposes of these things. So bringing in plants, bringing in composted material, bringing in, according to my research of what I'm seeing around. And everybody has a different yard and an ecosystem and, different, starting points and abilities, around them. And so dynamic accumulators. So they will mine nutrients from the soil. It can be really weak soil. It could be whatever. It's going to mine those up to its leaf surfaces. You harvest those. And if they are high in those nutrients, they're going to transfer either into your JLF. If it's very juicy, like Chris was saying, you could ferment, do a sugar ferment like Korean Natural Farming would be a fermented plant juice. I personally don't do a ton of the sugar-based ones because, well, it's just not sustainable for where we're at. Yes, there is Michigan beet sugar, but it is all going to be GMO sugar, so there's not going to be any local source. My only caveat is making fish amino acid. So I work at a culinary school,
And throughout the course of a year, there's a ton of different food waste, from veggies all the way down to meat products. A lot of the veggies I take home and feed to my animals. Other ones, like extra fish, I will actually purchase sugar, good organic or non-GMO cane sugar, and prepare that. And we'll actually tomorrow morning, I'm gonna bring some extra fish that I pulled from the freezer from there.
And you see the water muddying up, it just starts looking like a little swampy water. But that's to make sure that you're getting all the, the stuff out of the tea bag as much as you can. Technically, if you did this for a little while, you've got a pretty good watering feed already. You know what I mean? Like this it's good to go. It's a compost extract, good to go. But from here, people like to aerate it. And the reason to aerate it is to try to expand upon the biology that's in there, and give it an opportunity to grow in there, to expand more biology in the system. Get some of my tea. This is the vermicompost with the tea amendments, the supercharged amendments in it. And so for a barrel like this, easiest way, the Jadam practices, quite frankly, are the easiest way to get big bulk organics easy. 100%. Because you don't have to do a whole lot of things. You don't have to go through all these fermentations and compost. You're literally just bringing some materials and doing some of these practices. We're not going to go through them all, but the main ones is a Jadam fertilizer, liquid fertilizer, and the Jadam microbial solutions. And so those two right there are basically all encapsulate one, full nutrient-rich, microbial-rich feed that is great for all gardening practices, and so there's great success, amongst a variety of gardening, just simply using those. So these two practices that we're discussing is, basically Korean natural farming and Jadam, and Jadam.
Plant because it's a biennial, and I know that when I come back, I'm going to find first-year plants, which are going to be more potent for things like lung problems. It's going to help with asthma. You can tincture it, you can drink it. In fact, if you have asthma, you can actually smoke mullein leaf, and it can reduce the inflammation in your lungs. This is how they used to treat, health issues back in the day. And so I'm marking consistently when I'm going out and foraging. I'm keeping either a mental tally. I do keep notebooks as well, so I know what areas to go to. State land is a really great place for people to go learn plant identification. And I often will take stuff and I will grab it and I will take an old book with me and I will press it right into that book. Now I have an on-hand resource to teach me about the plant that I need. Because though I might know the name of it, I just knew this was fuzzy leaf as a kid. And that you could put it on if you had bee stings or if you had a cut. It's natural toilet paper. So I didn't know that it was called mullein. I just was like, that's fuzzy. And the other one is fuzzy and it grows a purple flower, which is actually lamb's ear. This is often mistaken for lamb's ear. They're not the same. Same family, different plant. So I'm marking out my territories. I'm looking around my own yard to see what do I want to keep, what do I want to move. I allow things like stinging nettle, goldenrod, garlic mustard, field bittercress, dandelion, obviously, comfrey. All of these things make up my garden. So my gardening theology is a little bit different because I want a garden that I can extract from. I can still eat these things, but I'm going to be processing them, tincturing them, dehydrating them. Foraging is really, really great. In fact, you guys are going to eat a soup today that has forage plants from this property in it. Because I was just like, hey, we're doing a foraging seminar. I'll go grab some stuff and chop it up and we'll throw it in there. You're going to eat stuff that will help your gum line regenerate. That is wild plantain. You're going to eat stuff that reduces chronic inflammation, stinging nettle. And you're going to eat some stuff that will help detoxify the liver. That's going to be the dandelion. And what else did we put in there, Riley? Was it? Oh, and the wide leaf plantain, which is for blood purification. So all of these plants grow native all over the state. Some were transferred here originally, but now they are repeat offenders. They continuously come back, right? So when I go out, I keep a garden claw because if I need to go through and dig up root systems, I'm going to go down into the earth and extract. And also because when I'm done, I want to put the soil back in place. I'm not trying to leave giant holes in the ground for people. For particularly woodier or sharp things like nettles, I keep little, what are these called? Shears on hand. So I keep a knife because I also go out and forage in the Appalachians and there's bears and stuff like that. I keep a machete because I like to go out and look for things like Japanese knotweed, which is part of the buckwheat family but looks like bamboo. And in order to take down a plant like that, you can't just go out with like a pair of scissors and start hacking. You're going to be there all night. And some of these things, because you want the root systems, you're going to want something a little bit stronger than just your basic knife because it will bend. Like the burdock plant has one of the deepest root systems. So when I go out, I'm actually cutting into the soil to extract the most of that root that I can get. The part that breaks off into the ground is going to regenerate again because it has such a widespread root system, but I'm trying to take as much of it as I can while leaving the ground intact for the next plants that are going to come through. And I take a shovel, obviously, a little one. Sometimes I go out with a big shovel, and that's when I'm getting like really serious. So the next thing is that I have a bag to keep all of these in, and I have a seed collector because I go around and I collect seed heads as well. I either collect seed heads and I sprinkle them throughout the woods as I go to help regenerate the population for the coming year, or I take a third of what I take and sprinkle, I put it in here and I go back to my own property and I put it in there. And then I get to see what comes up in the next years. And I'm foraging in my backyard because I have no idea what's going to take and what's not going to take. So there's another thing that can help a lot with foraging, and that is obviously books, right? We have a lot of education and stuff like that. But one of the bigger issues that you will probably find in the foraging community is you're going to find these, God bless it, she's a really nice author, but you're going to find stuff like this, and it's going to be like, you can just put that on your skin. Just put it in soap. Just put it in this. But the truth is that you can ingest and extract a lot more of these plants than are talked about.
For years, but some of these funnels and things, and it's a big conveyor, and I got that other hopper and stuff. I haven't even been able to use it yet because I have to have it staged just right to be able to even use it. And so, got to get my greenhouse built. I'm going to put a big cement slab right here real soon, and a cement slab in the front of the greenhouse as well, so that we can properly stage all of this stuff and get a higher volume. We do soil at a pretty good volume, but quite frankly, I need to tenfold the volume without working harder, so the only way to do it is to get that set up. But it's coming. It'll happen this summer. This is a little bit overgrown here, but these are raised beds in here. I've grown a lot of cannabis back in these hoops. And then we've been, building out the farm, clearing trees and stuff like that. Just put the wood boiler in this year, and so that boiler actually we trenched underneath, so it heats a couple of heaters in the house, and it does my hot water heater as well. But it heats the floors in the barn, and the barn is for my soil projects and worm castings and things like that. So I got some big worm beds and things in there. But yeah, that's the soil production barn. And then I got greenhouse hoops, little hoop house hoops right there. It's a 30 by 70 greenhouse that we're gonna put, so it'll be twice as long as the barn, but it'll go parallel to the barn. And I'm gonna do more composting and soil mixing in there. I'll put some of this bigger equipment inside of it.
How many cord of wood do you go through in a season?
Yeah, it's a good 10 cords, I'd say, what we burned this year. And that is a lot, but I was okay with it because we do have a lot of trees to work on through the year. And these trees are pretty worthless. Those are all Austrian pines in the middle. And people thought they could do something with them when they planted them, but it's just all burn wood. But the good thing about burning it is it doesn't have really have much sap at all.
Yeah,
So it burns easy.
Heat is easy on that.
Yep.
Sure.
And so it's a dual benefit. Propane is extremely expensive, so if I had to pay for propane to heat this, which I have worms in there, and so in the wintertime I can't have my worms freeze, and I can't have my soil business stop in the wintertime because I got to have a demand ready in the spring. so I have to heat it, and so it was a good dual purpose to do the logs and get rid of some things around here. And so the next big production, we thought we'd have the greenhouse done already, but because it's been here for a month, but I've just been so busy with projects. But we got a solid plan to throw it up, and I got a good crew to get it done, and it'll get done. So we'll have the greenhouse up and a few things rocking there. And I got another vegetable hoop house that I'm gonna put up too. Right now I got some seed starts and some in a little greenhouse behind my barn here. And then I got a little hops patch back there that I've been growing, like 20 different hops plants back there that I use for brewing, but I also make them in a cannabis input because hops is humulene, and humulene is one of the main terpenes that comes through in cannabis and hemp production. And so I like to use that hops ferment feed in my garden program to try to boost the aromas and the profiles in the plant. So working on that, but we'll keep it moving a little down, but they do grow better in here. One of the things I've been trying to do is propagate some comfrey patches, so I just moved a few of these. But yeah, just some flowers and different things in here. But this year I'm put some more perennials in here. We got lavender.
You're all right. Sorry.
And I always do like some lettuce variety things and a couple of pepper plants because I like to just come out and just pick a few herbs and lettuce and eat off them every so often when I can. But always keeping with some permaculture things. Like we just put some flowers in here yesterday, as a matter of fact. So it's early season. We're just getting everything going. But for the garden beds out here, mainly just trying to keep up with some salad variety, some pretty things to look at. Some things that we can just come pick off through the year and eat on. And I was saying like the kale. The kale's already coming back from last year. So we get a lot of kale. Kale's excellent in smoothies and shakes, like that's what I predominantly do with kale is eat it in a smoothie. Smoothies are a great way to just get your vegetable intake. You know what I mean? It's hard to, eat all these down sometimes, so quite frankly, smoothies work good for me. I encourage, a smoothie diet very much because it's just the easiest way to get, a bunch of things going. So lettuce variety stuff. We got some nasturtiums in here, and I've done a lot of different tomatoes and stuff over here. But this year I'm doing my tomatoes back there, and so that's part of what we're doing too. Is you don't always want to do the same thing in every place. You want to, especially if you have multiple garden beds or even just one garden bed. If you grew your whatever here last year, you should try to grow that in a different corner and try to rotate things around. So we'll talk a little bit more about that strategy tomorrow. Raised to have the utmost respect for everything that we hunt and to optimize the ability there. And partridge is one of those birds that is introduced for hunting, and so I have nephews and sons and things like that. And so I am looking forward to once a year we're going to let them partridge go in the land, and we're going to do an orchestrated hunt, and we're just going to shoot some of them and teach the kids and teach a few people how that goes. So that'll be a pretty good process right there. So I won't shoot them all because it's easier to just kill them and process them than it is to shoot them, and you ruin some meat potentially. But I do want to make that a part for something that my family can do once a year. Because I don't know if you've ever eaten a partridge. It is a very delicate chicken meat that is like nice, tender, and they're really easy to clean too. Quite frankly, you just have to dehead them, and the skin just pulls right off of a fresh bird. Versus chickens, you got to put them in a washer and tumble them, and it just beats all the feathers off. Yep, partridges, just peel it right off. So I did research with alpaca farmers on what I needed, and they told me they just need shelter to get out of the weather, and they're fine. They lay down together and they lay in the hay and things. So pretty easy animal to maintain. So getting into livestock and things, that's where I wanted to start with something pretty easy. And so it was beneficial uses for me and not too hard to maintain. And I'm hoping to get some more someday, but pockets aren't cheap either. A few $1,000s, and they can go for like 10, 20, $30,000, for some of the exotic ones. So just for the attraction of um, people always ask about them spitting and stuff, and they do spit. They, because of their long necks, they eat, and if they eat too fast and you get them excited, they can't really swallow it too well, and so they just choke it right out, And so sometimes it's a reflux type of thing, but they will do it purposely too. I won't lie. Like that's like with the big novelty having a bunch of people around, like have everybody trying to feed them because they start competing for things and then they start spitting at each other and they'll do things like that. So it's just learning their behaviors, things like that. A lot of alpaca farms, they say they choose just like one or two to really spoil for touristy type stuff to walk around with people, hand feed. But the rest of them, they said, trust me, you're better off not to spoil them because it'll just make them too picky and they won't live naturally the way they're supposed to live. So yeah, it becomes a thing.
You use their manure to do your vermicomposting. Do you also add in all of your in yards waste scraps into that same, or do you do them separately?
No, good call. I do mix them all together.
Okay.
And so I run my larger scale composting project from a landscape yard, and so we round up extra materials, and I'll just get a trailer to bring it over and blend it with these materials. But I am working on. I was talking about the greenhouse and the cement pads and all that. As soon as I get my property a little more staged out, we're going to be doing more of that here. But you can imagine what kind of work it takes to set up a big soil scale operation.
Oh yeah.
And so I chose to bypass because I didn't have all the money and the opportunity to do it. So I went and kind of pitched myself to some of these landscapers, like I could help build the soil and I could sell the soil, but we got to have space and equipment to do it. And so
Yeah.
my business doing it that way, and I just run the composting, and I got bins in there, and I got some compost bins over here. But yeah, we'll keep walking. One thing you saw the chickens in here. We used to have the chicken coop in the front of the barn right there before we built that, and it's in the woods, where there's a lot of predators around, and so they get picked off for various reasons. And so we've moved them around, and we've secure their cages and things. But the last time they got eaten, two of them got out, and they came in here. And I came out, and my wife and I looked, and we were like, yeah, they're probably pretty safe around the bigger animals. There's no reason. They're extremely juicy. So you crack it open, and it's you could drip water right out of it probably. So it's extremely juicy.
You strain that out and then.
Yeah, you strain it out.
Strain
And so
and store
this
it.
sits then for 7 to 10 days.
Okay.
You can stir it once in between and then put a little more sugar on top because the sugar on top keeps the molds and that keeps all the material back in there. When you're doing like cabbage ferments and stuff, they do it like this, but they use salts and things
Yeah.
like that. And then they put a nice rock on it because you want to keep it in that salty, rich, wet environment and not in the air because the air is going to make it cause bad, microbes, and you're going to get green molds and things. So
Foraging with Country Roots event was definitely one you didn't want to miss. With so much knowledge and a variety of community greatness, you definitely want to attend the next one. So make sure you put it on the calendar and keep your eyes peeled to Country Roots Instagram.